Thanks for tuning in to The Real Deal Show, brought to you by ebodyboarding.com and Tribe Boards. Well, howdy, everybody. Jay Reale here with The Real Deal Show and special guest here next to me. This special guest happens to be my wife, Vicki Reale. Hello, Vicki.
Hi, how's it going, mate?
Throwing a little Aussie flavor in there. I'm just going to give Vicki a little audio heads up. You want to see that thing, see how mine's spiking up and down. You want to see yours like that. So I'm giving her a little audio lesson.
Is it not working for me?
It's working. Oh. You're just not talking loud enough, and your face needs to be right on top of that.
How about now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
All right. The topic of this Real Deal show is wave pools. So we thought we would do a wave pool episode because we're on the eve of our 2021 Texas Tube Tour, Vicki.
Yes, can't wait.
And what is the Texas Tube Tour for those folks out there who don't know what it is?
We invite or ask a bunch of bodyboarders to come with us, to join us at Bsr and,
Bsr, what's Bsr?
What is it?
Barefoot Ski Ranch.
Oh, yeah. Also called Bsr Surf Resort.
It is now, yes.
Yes. But, fellow bodyboarders come join us and we get the custom wave settings and look at the menu of waves, which is super cool, and, pick the waves that are most ideal to bodyboarders. We kind of borrowed surfers from our Texas Tube Tour because we feel like, bodyboard waves are a little different than surf waves. And, the group of people we have coming, we have beginners to intermediate to experts. So, those different abilities that in the types of waves they offer, it's cool that we can pick those waves for bodyboarding,
I think the better way to say it is we cater to bodyboarders.
That's it. Yes, I mean, we surf too.
Because we ride surfboards too, and we ride them out there sometimes as well. So we'll get into BSR in a little bit in the Texas Tube Tour, but let's go back. Let's go back to our first experience with a wave pool. And I'm going to go back to mine, which started for me in the late 80s when I was doing the Pro Surfers Association of America tour, which had a bodyboarding division. That's the PSAA tour, which eventually became the Bud Surf Tour. They had an event. My first wave pool event was at Wild Rivers Water Park in Irvine, California. Now, they had a wave pool event prior to that at Wet and Wild in Palm Springs, which I think at that point was called something different, like Typhoon Lagoon or something. But in any case, once I moved to California in 87, they had Wild Rivers contests. I believe it was in 88 and 89. And that wave pool, there were a few wave pools around the world. I remember just, again, backing up, the World Surfing Tour had their first wave pool event at a place called Dorney Park in Pennsylvania. It was a little wave pool. I think Tom Carroll won the event. It's a little dribbly 2 to 3 foot, just crummy, gutless wave. And Wild Rivers wasn't much different than that. It was bigger than 2 to 3 feet, probably pushing maybe close to 4 foot face right at the beginning of the wave. And the technology on that pool was pretty standard for that period of time, the late 80s. It was a big pool, like maybe a little bigger than an Olympic-sized pool, or maybe about that same size. And it had these, what I'll call baffles. They were basically huge panels at the back of the pool, and they would basically push water at intervals to create like a swell that moved through the pool.
So mushy.
It was mushy, but more importantly, it was a kind of an inefficient system. It takes a lot of energy to push that much water. So those kind of wave pools, that's all the technology allowed at that time. And they would produce about 2 or 3 waves, and then they'd have to stop because the pool would be churning so much with like a rip running out through the middle of the break and the water just boiling and swirling. So they'd have to let it calm down again before they'd pump out a few more waves, so that they were nice and smooth. So I remember competing in that. It was a super cool novelty thing to ride waves in a wave pool. And the next opportunity I had was in 1980, I believe it was 88 or 89. There's a gentleman here in Southern California. His name is Tom Lochtefeld. And Tom is a surfer. He was a lawyer as well, but he also had a really inventive mind. And he lived down in San Diego, still does. And he came up with this, what he called sheet flow technology. And sheet flow, if you've ever heard of a flow rider, that's exactly what it is. So essentially he has a surface which is covered in like spongy foam, so it's soft and cushioned, and that surface slopes upward and over into a pool. So you have this slope, and he jets a sheet of water up the slope, and gravity, if you get onto that slope, the gravity actually makes you want to go down where the water is pulling you up, and you kind of find a balance, and you can do turns back and forth on that sheet flow.
Like a stationary wave.
Like a stationary wave in a river, exact same concept. That's probably where he got the idea from, I would think. And people had been riding river waves already. I remember Danny Kim and Ben Severson went to the Snake River in Idaho and rode the stationary wave there with Ted Robinson and maybe a couple other surfers, a body glove team trip back in the late 80s. So,
and Waimea, was that?
Waimea, we were breaking open the river at Waimea. So, Tom, I'm sure, was inspired maybe by some of that as well. So he developed the sheet flow technology, and he had to find somebody who was willing to invest in his idea. So there's a gentleman named Jeff Henry at Schlitterbahn Water Park in Texas that, he was kind of a rip-roaring, sort of a risk-taker sort of a guy, and he had built this huge, epic water park in New Braunfels, Texas, and he agreed to build the first flow rider, and he didn't want just the basic slope with the water rushing up it. He wanted to go big. Everything's bigger in Texas. So Jeff decided he would. His name was Jeff Henry. Did I say that already? Yeah. So Jeff.
Schlitterbahn Water Park.
Yeah, Schlitterbahn Water Park. So Jeff said, let's make one that tubes. So they actually shaped that wall like a barreling wave, and then they shot the water at it and it actually barreled. So Tom wanted to get some people over there to ride it, and he thought, well, surfers are going to struggle because they got skegs on their boards, and the water flow. The sheet of water was so thin that you couldn't really ride it with fins on the board. So he thought this is perfect for bodyboarding, and he brought over a small crew of riders, which was J.P. Patterson and I want to say Kevin Okamura, Brian Press, a couple other guys. They drove over to Texas, and they rode this thing for a couple of days. And then later, Tom brought another crew, which I was a part of. Tom Lochtefeld, the inventor, I should say. I was a part of the second group, which was 8 of us, including Keith Sasaki, Mike Stewart, and some others. And we went over there and we rode that thing for hours and hours. It was insane. We had so much fun. It was such a novelty. It was literally an endless wave, and you could get barreled on it. You could do spins, get air if you did it right. And we went there the first time wearing swim fins on our feet. We didn't know. We had regular bodyboards with fins. And at some point during a subsequent trip, Mike Stewart kind of got the clue that, hey, this needs to be approached differently than ocean waves, because the water's rushing at you rather than you rushing across the water. And so Mike, in his infinite wisdom on this one trip, basically took a knife and hacked his tail from a crescent into a rounded tail, because he knew with the water rushing at like 15 miles an hour, you just catch one little edge when you're doing a spin with a crescent tail, and you're gone over the back of the wave. Or in the case of Texas, over with the lip, which was kind of perilous because you were 6 feet up in the air, basically getting suplexed onto a mat.
Suplex.
Yeah, that's a pro wrestling word there, folks. So Mike came up with the rounded tail, and I think also figured out, hey, we don't need fins. We don't need to generate speed. And we can do the edge control with, a smaller board. So that's when the design changes to flow boards came around, with the rounded tails and a smaller board. You didn't need to generate speed. and you needed a board that could spin easily, and flow boards came into being, which basically spawned an entire business. My friend Chris Granoni, he has an entire company called World Class Bodyboards that they make boards for the flow rider parks.
Only flow boards, right?
Yeah, he makes he makes some standard ocean boards, but you don't really hear about that. He focuses on the flow boards, and there's flow riders all over the world. They're on cruise ships, they're at water parks. I mean, they're in malls, they're everywhere. So Lochtefeld sold that business a long time ago. And that was a massive success. So that was my second experience. I also got to go to Norway to ride that one when it first opened. And just I know I keep talking here, but a quick aside on that one is that the Norway one, they literally just finished building it. It was in a town called Bo, I can't remember how to pronounce it, but it was in the mountains in Norway, a couple hours from Oslo, and beautiful place. We stayed on the side of a ski resort, and we had Tom Boyle with us, who is one of the premier videographers in the sport. He's just iconic, and he was there to capture the whole thing. And we had myself, Mike Stewart, Keith Sasaki, Brian Press. I can't remember who else was on that trip. No. Not Haoli. He wasn't on that trip. No, not Roach. But we had pro snowboarder Terje Hawkinson, who was, is a legend in the sport of snowboarding, and Norwegian. He came as well. But when we arrived to the place, they literally had not even turned the thing on. So they didn't even know if it would work. And we got there the first day, and we were supposed to basically do a demo on the day the thing opened to the public, and they had never tested it. So we get there, and they flip the switch on this thing, and it's like a giant flood. So the entire water park area around the flow rider, water was just flowing over the sides. So they were panicking because they were like 2 days from the opening of the park and the public being there.
What were they thinking?
I don't know. They just ran out of time. So they said, we need help. You guys are going to have to go fill sandbags, and you're going to have to create a barrier for the water. So literally all of us went to this like sand pit near the water park, and we spent a couple hours filling bags of sand and putting them on a big flatbed truck, and then driving them to the park and loading them, stacking them around the pool. And eventually, that was a couple hours work easily, and they ended up scrapping that, and some dudes came in and put up a cement wall like overnight and the next day, so the cement had time to dry, so that when the park opened, they would have, it didn't look so shoddy, a bunch of sandbags floating around. So anyway, so the Norway trip was a success, with the exception of Brian Press, who broke his collarbone. We all encouraged him to do this like roundhouse wraparound and go back and hit the lip going the other way, and he just airdropped onto the mat and just snapped his collarbone, which was a bummer for Brian, but all's well that ends well. He recovered from that. So anyway, that was the flow rider thing, and eventually you and I ended up sort of helping to run the World Flow Rider Bodyboarding Championships, which was held at New Braunfels maybe 10 years in a row. The last several years, you and I sort of ran the contest, or at least I did. I'm not sure if you helped, but
I helped,
but tell me about your experience with that. That was your first wave pool too, right?
Yeah, I remember after you came back, I think the following year, they said, let's do an event. So we rallied the troops, and they had accommodation right along the lazy river there. It was a cool setup, and you'd be in bed in the morning and you'd hear this, and you'd be like, oh, the wave's on. And sometimes Jeff, the owner, he was a lot of fun, even at 10 p.m. at night, you would hear it, and you'd be like, Jeff's out there with all his buddies surfing it, let's go. And we'd wake up out of our slumber and head out there and ride the wave with Jeff and his buddies. So that was super fun. But yeah, we had a couple of events there, and people from all over. We had women's. Did we have a drop knee event? I can't remember if drop knee was part of it, but
I can't remember either if there was a drop knee division or not.
Yeah.
Can't believe I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't know either. But yeah, we went back many years, didn't we? And actually, a funny side note to that is I was in Hawaii one year, I'm not sure what year it was, and I got a call saying that they were going to do a Pepsi commercial there, and did I want to be in it? Remember that?
Yeah, because you got invited because you were the first place in the World Flow Rider Bodyboarding Championships, and I don't know, you won it a few times. This is 2001. So that's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That I don't know if that was the last year we went or not. I'm not sure, but that's why they invited you for the Pepsi gig.
I think so. So I'm like, heck yeah. And I think Terrier and I don't know who else got invited.
It was Tony Hawk, wasn't he there?
Tony Hawk and Terrier, yes. So they said, we're going to fly you first class from Hawaii to Texas if you want to be in this commercial. And I'm like, heck yeah. And it's
you
really
were getting
cool.
paid.
I think if you Google it, like Australian Pepsi commercial, it'll come up. It's like this unique ad where these guys look like
road warrior
yeah,
dudes.
they head out to the desert, and the desert turns into this wave. And anyway, Google it, you'll find it probably. So that was a cool experience to go out and ride the Flow Rider for a Pepsi commercial. But yeah, it was dangerous, but at times, I think consistently there was broken collarbones and shoulders, wasn't there? Because you would try and hit the lip or whatever and doing a roll, and you would gadoosh, sometimes it'd suck you over and land right on your shoulder. And
and the water was 2 inches deep, man. So you were landing on basically it was like getting body slammed on a gym mat from 6 feet up in the air.
The water would hit you in the head while you're getting...
And pin you to the ground. So you're there with your injury, getting pinned to the bottom and thinking, I'm gonna drown in a frickin' wave pool. What's going on here?
But the best part was just an endless barrel. You always have those dreams if you're a surfer or a bodyboarder, getting barreled endlessly. And you could on this, as long as you could hold on, you could, sit in there and just get slotted. That was... one of the best parts for me, but a little bit different than the ocean because, you took off your fins. Eventually you guys figured that out. And
I don't even think we just didn't even bring fins with us because we didn't need them.
Yeah.
And we'd get special boards made, custom flow boards, to, I remember getting asymmetrical boards made because the one in Texas was a right-hander. So I would just put a channel on the right side of the board to hold my edge. Not on the left side. You didn't want anything catching when you did spins and stuff. And we would wear water shoes because we had this thing, I think maybe Brian Press was the first guy to do it, where we would run from in front of the wave, launch up off the lip, and you needed grip because you had a slippery foam surface, right? And if you didn't have some grip on your feet, you wouldn't get the grip that you needed to run, fast to launch that big initial air. So,
sometimes. But that ended. Why did we stop doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think really it was like a promotional gig for the park to get some publicity, and at that point, the park just went in a different direction in terms of marketing. They didn't really need the publicity anymore. So
that barrel, they just did the flat wave that all the public could ride. So they switched to that.
So the public didn't even get to ride the same wave that we did. I mean, it was the same feature at the water park, but they wouldn't crank it up to make the wave barrel.
But I remember you guys would all go, these guys, not necessarily Jay, but they'd all wait for the public session to open and all these girls to get on with their bikinis. So their tops would come off and they'd be like, ah!
Yes. In fact, I remember that happen all the time. That was a common thing. So,
this chick's top's coming off for sure. Let's watch her.
I'm sure there was like, some sort of competition if you worked at Schlitterbahn to get that gig to be the lifeguard at the Flow Rider if you were a guy. So, some of the stars of that Flow Rider event, Kyle Maligro won it multiple times. I got second multiple times. Brian Press was one of the best at that thing. Vicki obviously was probably the best female. I think he won it 2 or 3 times. And some other girls, Stephanie Peterson, did really well. She got injured there once, I remember. I think she hurt her knee or her shoulder or something, ankle. And there was a local guy named Heath Purvis that worked at the park. He was a lifeguard at the park, but he was really good on the Flow Rider. And he learned a lot from us. Like, he had never bodyboarded in the ocean. And like they called it the curl when the wave would tube, and we called it the tube. So he sort of, changed his lingo when we were there to sort of assimilate,
and
I guess.
I think Brian ended up taking Heath out here in California in the ocean, remember?
Oh,
Didn't
yeah, I don't
he come to stay
remember.
with Brian, and Brian taught him how
probably.
to ride the ocean, which he couldn't do because, you
Yeah.
have to paddle out and duck dive. And
Full Rick Kane scenario there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, pretty classic, man.
yeah.
So the Flow Rider years were amazing. In terms of wave pools, after that, Vicki and I started doing the world tour in the mid-90s, and the world tour had 2 events in Japan that had wave pools. The first I'll touch on was Wild Blue Yokohama. Do you remember Wild Blue Yokohama?
Yep.
Yeah, so that was an indoor wave pool. It was
I think
this
Galermy would win those.
indoor water park. It seems like Galermy might have
Yeah.
won the men's, the women's. I can't remember.
Was that only 1 year we did that?
Only 1 year,
Yeah.
Wild Blue Yokohama, and it was a really small gutless wave. Again, the baffle system with this big panel that pushed out a swell, and it was like this little, like 2 to 3 foot high, waist high, just crummy wave, and we would spin and roll. That was really all you could do on that wave. So the idea was who could cram the most spins and rolls into the wave before it ended on the cement beach. But the cool part of the wave pool scenario here in Japan was the next event, and that was at a place called Miyazaki, which was in the southern part of the country.
Ocean Dome.
Yeah, the Sigaya Ocean Dome.
Gosh, your memory.
Yeah, so the Ocean Dome event, this was a huge water park, and it was essentially, it was a domed wave pool. It had this dome that would retract on sunny days.
Dome Stadium.
It was sort of like a
Yeah.
stadium, and they had, they could retract the roof when the sun was shining, or close it if it was raining or nighttime. And they had this like scenery at the back of the thing that looked like this tropical volcano and palm trees and everywhere. So they wanted it to look like this tropical destination. And they had this big wave pool, and they brought in like Australian pro surfers who were like the resident pros there, who would do this laser light show with costumes every night. They did this like pirate, it was like this pirate dinner theater kind of thing where they would wear these costumes and they'd surf the wave and like launch a big air off the end section, and there was music and laser lighting, and that was at night. But during the day they would just run this sort of a gentle wave, and people could go out with inner tubes and rafts and just kind of play around. It just, the smell of chlorine, still haunts me to this day. It was so strong in that place. But
And I think they had restaurants on the beach in front.
yeah, there's
in
restaurants
there,
like
yeah.
snack
It's super
bars
cool.
and locker rooms.
It's kind of like a Vegas kind of,
yeah,
setup.
it really was.
Yeah.
Yeah, real Vegas-y kind of a vibe to that place. So in I believe it was 95, maybe, they had us come down there after we had an ocean event at Omiyazaki, which, was an event they had year after year.
Oh, yeah, and I think Salem Cigarettes sponsored it.
So Salem Cigarettes was the sponsor of the
right.
Ocean Dome
Oh, my
Wave Pool
gosh.
contest, which is so ironic.
We all got a free pack of cigarettes.
Yeah,
No, we
in
didn't, but
Japan.
that'd be hilarious.
A lot of young people smoke, or did at that time. I don't know if that's still the case, but so they, I guess the demographic was similar. So they had us come in. We had 100 and I don't know how many people entered in the event, and they had to give everyone a practice session, and there wasn't enough waves being produced for everyone to get a lot of practice in. So you literally got like
One left and one right.
maybe
no?
like in the practice,
think.
I remember getting like one practice
Yeah.
or something, maybe two. You'd ride like 3 or 4 waves, and that was it. And then you had to compete like the next day. So they had one day totally devoted to practice, and they give every competitor your time window when you got to get in the pool and get your waves, which was, like half an hour. That was your
Equal
whole
playing
time in the
field,
pool.
though,
Yeah, sure. So everyone had it the same. And they had this really unique setup with the pool. Do you remember the waves that we had in the pool?
Yeah, I think there was a right and a left, and the person over, they'd take turns, right? And there was barreling on the concrete and the shore break.
Well, there are
think
3
that's what I
waves, right? So you'd have 3 competitors in the water at a time, and one person was on one side of the pool, one in the middle, and the other on the other side. So the first wave that cranked out was a right, and it was sort of like a point break type wave, kind of a mushy right. But you could do spin, roll, maybe get another roll in, and the wave's over. Then a center peak would come, and it was like a short, really intense, hollow center peak. You could go right or left on it. You could get like one or two quick maneuvers and it's over. And then the third wave was really the marquee wave, in my opinion, everyone else's opinion. It was a left wedge off the wall on the left side of the pool. So it would bang off the wall and wedge up and actually barrel and have an air section when you came out of the barrel. And that wave was like almost head high. You can actually Google ocean dome surfing and or go to YouTube and look for that, and you'll see guys riding that wave. So that was the one that everybody really wanted, but you had to ride all three waves, and you got your scores, and then you either advanced or you didn't. And do you remember I remember Claudia Ferrari like smashed her shoulder on the bottom. She eventually became world champion. And the winner of that event, I think it was GT versus Eppo in the final, and I think GT won in the men's, and the women's, maybe it was Steph Peterson.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Don't remember, but that was a pretty unique event, right?
That was fun. It was super cool, yeah.
Yeah. So
competing in Vegas felt like, you know.
Yeah. And they had the Salem girls, these girls in these white one-piece bathing suits, like walking around with Salem written on their suits, handing out like packs of cigarettes. It was just insanely bizarre.
Yeah.
Another event I did, this is a side note, in Japan, they gave Barbies to all the finalists. I made the final. I got a Barbie. I'll never, because Mattel owned Mori Bodyboards. Mori was the sponsor of that event. Barbies to all the winners. So I don't know. Somebody didn't think that one through. Anyway,
I thought it was a bodyboarding Barbie.
No, I ended up giving it to my niece. I remember. Yeah, I brought it back from Japan. Anyway, long story short. So that's a side note. So moving on from there, the World Tour days for Vicki and I came to a close, and there was a long drought for us where we really didn't ride wave pools other than taking our kids to water parks that had flow riders. And we would hop on there and go, like, watch, kids, this is how you do it. There's one down in Vista. There's one in San Diego for many years called the Wave House. It was a flow rider, a barreling one, actually. That one claimed several victims, but also hosted many great events. And I think we got to ride that a few times. But
and I think Chris Granoni still does flow rider
events,
doesn't he?
There are still flow rider events around the country at various water parks and wave pools and so forth. So, the flow rider thing continues. But we'll fast forward to, let's see, the next time we got to ride a wave pool would have been BSR in 2019. So for those of you that don't know, BSR, Barefoot Ski Ranch, why is it called that? Because when that ranch first existed, it was a water ski wakeboard destination. They had what's called a cable park, and they also had some lakes that you could tow people and boats to wakeboard. Cable park in the wakeboarding world, for those that don't know, is essentially you have a sort of a donut-shaped lake with towers around it with a cable stretched around that donut shape, and there's a pulley system that has a tow rope attached to it. And you grab the tow rope and it tows you around that donut-shaped lake until you fall. You fall and you just swim back to the shore and go back to the launch dock. And they're all over the place. There's a lot of wakeboard lakes. But anyway, that's how it started. And
I think the owner too, his son was a surfer and was like, hey, Dad, how about building a surf park? I think that's how the BSR added the addition of the surf park there. I don't know if you knew that.
So that was the impetus behind it. And there's a guy that had a company called American Wave Machines, and his technology was called Perfect Swell Technology. So he collaborated with the owner of that park because they had this huge property to the northeast of Waco, Texas. And they said, hey, let's build this pool here. Let's build the this state-of-the-art wave pool. And it's same, just like back in the Tom Lochtefeld days. You had to go to Texas to get something like that done.
Yeah.
So that happened again. The American Wave Machines guy and the BSR owner collaborated. And in 2016, BSR Surf Resort was born. And the first video I saw of BSR, I think it was 2016, because it was around the same time as the Surf Ranch launched up in Lemoore, Kelly Slater's wave pool. But in any case, the first videos we saw of BSR, people went bonkers. People were like, how can I get there? How can I ride it?
Right? Was it?
Well, Shane Magnuson, who's a guy from Hawaii, a surfer from Hawaii, he got hired basically to turn that into a surfer's haven. So he moved his family over to Waco. They worked with him. He learned how to program the wave, how to make it, basically a surfable wave.
Yeah. But talk about the technology difference from
Yeah.
the Flow Rider for the BSR,
Big change. Like the baffle system and the sheet flow technology of the 80s and early 90s now give way to a pneumatic technology. And the way that works is there's these basically tubes, several of them, 15
caissons,
to 20
right?
tubes. They call them caissons. They're essentially tubes, and they fill them with air, and they release that air underwater in a sequence that produces a swell. And they can say release the ones on this side to create a swell and wait a second or two, and then release ones on this side to create a wedge. And they can release them in any sequence they want to create various types of waves: air sections, barrels, wedges, point style waves. So it's super versatile. It's a big video screen, and they tap it out to create whatever wave you want, and they can literally do it on demand. So, you can say, oh, I want the wedge wave this time, and you ride that, and then you can say, okay, the next one I want the air section, and they can boop, boop, and the next wave is an air section. So super versatile, way more efficient as opposed to the old system of the baffles where stuff would break and it was a lot of energy it took to generate the wave. Not to mention the versatility of being able to create multiple types of waves. So that was great. And then, they started opening to the public, and it just took off. So we were kind of frothing to get over there because we had seen all the videos on YouTube. I think Jamie O'Brien was the first person I ever saw surf it, and in the video where he surfed it, they were literally still like building the infrastructure of the surf resort, to handle what they hoped would be a lot of guests. And Jamie O'Brien was brought over because he knew Shane Magnuson, and they thought, what better guy to promote this to the surfing community. So we went in 2019. What do you remember about that first trip that we went?
I remember, walking through the doors of BSR, and you just couldn't believe your eyes in this Miller, Texas. He's this peeling way right and left, and people just shredding on it and just frothing, going, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So, and to me, it was, the perfect wave almost, in that, you could get barreled on it, you could do any maneuver you wanted on it. And, we only got to experience the public session there though, remember? Which is the same wave, three waves every, minute or whatever. And you'd be out there with 9 people. Is that what it was?
Yep.
And, the first, you'd be in packs of 3, and there'd be 3 waves. So you would rotate with those 3 people that you were with. So you might get the first wave, and then the second wave on the next 3, and then the third wave on the next 3. And, that was super fun. But we're friends with Chris Monroe, and he would go out there with Kalani and the Catch Surf crew, and we would see the waves that they would ride, remember? And we were like, we want to surf those too. The public wave was super fun, but maybe next time we'll try and get the custom waves. So, our first experience, we fell in love with it and just wanted more. So I think we then said, we should try and, come here with a crew of bodyboarders and see if we can rent it out for the day and get those custom waves that we've seen on videos. So I don't know what your first experience was like.
Yeah, I mean,
but
kind of mirrors yours. You
Yeah.
know, we got there with, I think, high expectations from what we had seen, because some friends of ours had been already. Bodyboard groups had been there, small groups, and they had ridden basically the public wave, but a couple guys had done private sessions for photo shoots or whatever, and so we saw what could potentially happen if we booked out the pool for a private session. The public wave, the expert setting, was super fun. It was like surfing a 3 to 4 foot beach break wave. You know, there's like an easy takeoff, and then you got barrel sections. You could hit the lip, you could drop knee. It had, you know, a really fun kind of a generic beach break style wave. But
and half-hour rights, half-hour lefts too. So
Yeah.
you could mix it up.
And you know, the price was pretty reasonable. It was like under $100 an hour, which sounds like a lot, but you get like 15 plus waves in an hour. Which
Guaranteed waves.
You'll never get 15 waves in an ocean session, or rare to get that many waves in an ocean session, especially waves that you can get tubed on every single wave if you want, and you don't have to fight for the wave because you take turns in the pool, right? Everyone gets a turn. You know what order you're in. There's no jockeying for position. You are guaranteed to get barreled if you have the skill to get barreled. And they have an intermediate and a beginner setting too for people that are kind of new to the whole thing.
And if you go the right time of year, you're in tropical water, because obviously Texas gets hot in the summer. So that was cool to, you know, surf in a bikini or a pair of trunks.
Yes,
You know?
and it was super warm. Like the first time we went was in the month of June, and then we actually it was in July. I apologize. And then the next year we went back in June with some friends and did the private session. That was 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. We had a blast, and then that's when we said, let's do the Texas Tube Tour in September of 2020. And that was a huge success. We had a crew of 18 riders and their significant others and kids, and everybody just had an absolute blast. And then Vicki and I went back again in May of 2021 to do the Red Bull Foam Wreckers event, and had a blast doing that. We didn't get a ton of surf time, but you know, we paid $25 to enter the event, and that's all we had to
And
pay.
I think tickets were cheap then too. But
Air tickets were like $89 round
yeah,
trip,
that's
right?
crazy.
So then we organized this year's Texas Tube Tour for October. There are new owners at BSR now. So a group of investors, all surfers, have taken the place over. They've really upped the game at that place. They've added a skate park and a pump track, and they're adding these epic like luxury houses that you can rent. They've added this recovery room. They've added food options at the park.
And they've added cost.
Yeah, they've added,
Yes.
added cost. So that's
So
the downside for
pricey,
the private sessions. Public sessions have gone up a little bit in price, but they are open like through December, and then they close for like January, February, and reopen in March. The water in that pool in the winter is cold, man. We're talking booties, gloves, 5 mil suits. So it's like winter surfing, you know,
Upper
in the
50s.
Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Northwest. Yeah, in the water's in the 50s there in the winter, low 50s even. But the air is freezing, you know, it snows in Waco occasionally in the winter. So, you know, but you can get the best prices if you go do a private session in the winter.
And
So
sometimes wearing rubber, you know, helps you a little. I got a permanent
Oh, yeah.
tattoo here from hitting the concrete. So
yeah, a lot of people ask about that.
Yeah.
They say, is it padded? What's
no,
the deal?
I remember the first year we went, I feel like it was, but it was kind of peeling off. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't.
Yeah.
No, because I got cut. I've gotten knee and elbow cuts every time
Yeah,
I've been.
I think I have too. You'll come out with a little bit of blood and scrapes, I think, you know, if you're charging and trying to, you know, practice your moves or, you know, go deeper or go higher.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one I think happened on a roll and it just slammed me on the bottom across like that. So that's a scar that's never going away. But, you know, it's knock on wood.
Yeah. Comes with the
Haven't
territory.
yeah, it does. Yeah. So wearing a little bit of neoprene could probably prevent that, but no one wants to wear neoprene.
Yeah, but we'll see. I mean, you know, when we're going in early October, the water temperature at the pool fluctuates based on the local weather. So if they get a couple of cold nights, the water can dip considerably. So, we'll just check before we go. But anyway, that trip is coming up in early October. So, if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, after that, we will be producing a video, thanks to our friend Brian Press, who's coming along this year again to produce a video for YouTube. So we'll let you know when that launches. The other wave pool technology there's a couple other companies. We mentioned American Wave Machines. There's also SurfLock, and SurfLock is Tom Lochtefeld, our friend from the Flow Rider days, with a very similar pneumatic technology, and he's behind the Palm Springs Surf Club, which is slated to open in the summer of 2022, which I'm sure will be a rousing hit here in Southern California because it's only an hour and a half to 2 hours from pretty much anywhere in Southern Cal. That'll be popular, and there's
Desert Willows.
There's a couple other ones slated for the desert, the valley out there, the Coachella Valley. So we'll see what the
Thermal Beach Club.
So,
out there.
But the other technologies are Wave Garden, which is it's a pretty similar technology to SurfLock and American Wave Machines. Wavegarden has several facilities around the world. There's one in South Korea, one in Japan, one in Switzerland, one in Melbourne, Australia, and another one in the UK. And the Surf Ranch Kelly Slater Waveco technology is, you've all seen that recently on TV, of course, The Ultimate Surfer. It's essentially a sled on a track, and that sled is attached to an underwater piece of, I don't know if it's metal or what, but it pushes water along the track and creates a wave. And that one's more like a point break style wave, right? It's a long peeler, and they can contour the bottom to change the shape of the wave, or they can control the speed of that sled/wedge device to control how the wave breaks, how fast or slow it breaks.
I thought it was the same wave every time.
No, it's not the same wave every time. In fact, if you look at early videos of Kelly when he first launched that in December 2016, I think was the first video, that wave was like barreling from beginning to end, and they decided, we need to have like a couple softer sections so people can bottom turn, do cutbacks, and hit the lip. So they changed something. I was told it was the bottom contours, but they can also adjust the wave with the speed of the sled. So there's some adjustability there, but basically it's a point break style wave and a much faster wave, whereas BSR is more like a beach break style wave. So,
and then you got Yapoon in Australia.
Yeah, that's right. That's yet another one. That's Surf Lakes technology. You may have all seen that. It's a very like steampunk Mad Max vibe to that one. It's a giant plunger, right, in the middle of a lake. And it's a circular lake with different reefs, which are made out of concrete in different shapes to create different types of waves. And this plunger plunges down in the water and generates swell. Imagine dropping a boulder into the middle of a pool. You get concentric rings of swell pushing out in multiple directions. And if you have a really shallow, abrupt change in the bottom contour, you're going to get a barreling wave. And if you have a gentle change in the contour of the bottom, you get more of a longboard wave. So they can have different waves all around the pool.
Different abilities.
Yeah. That one seems really prone to breaking down, though, to me, because you got this giant mechanical device, and one little thing breaks, and you're basically out of commission. Whereas the Caisson technology that American Wave Machines and SurfLock uses, one of those pneumatic tubes goes out, you can still operate the wave with the rest of them around it. So I think it's a little more efficient technology, but all of them are super cool, and it's a great time to be in the sport of surfing or bodyboarding if wave pools are something that you're interested in. And it's bringing wave riding to the masses, like eventually, someday, because the ocean is getting more crowded, and it's a finite resource, the amount of waves. We all, those of us that have been doing this long enough, we've all seen fights and arguments in the water over waves.
Yeah, and what I like about it is this morning we were watching the US Open, and they would sit there for 15, 20 minutes without a wave coming, And I was watching the women's, and one of the girls lost because she couldn't get a wave.
Yep.
So I love that it, equals the playing field in competitive surfing and bodyboarding, where everyone has the same amount of waves, the same wave, and let's see what you can do. And, it's all a matter of matching.
Yeah. Well,
outdoing.
It does. It really narrows it down to your wave riding ability.
Not Mother Nature.
Whereas, surfing the ocean is not just your wave riding ability. There's an element of luck. There's an element of wave knowledge and observational skills, like, where is it breaking the best right before my heat? That's where I'm going to sit.
Yeah.
Wave pools eliminate all that.
Yeah.
So if you really want to get down to brass tacks and judge someone on their ability to ride a wave pools are it. And there's a ton of debate in the wave riding world. It's the purists will argue that wave pools are ruining surfing. They're terrible, and you'll never replace the ocean experience. And of course that's true. And those of us that, don't compete, the ocean experience is half the reason we go out there. You're in nature. You're having to adapt to changes in the ocean, changes in the tide, the waves, the wind, and so forth. And that's all part of the fun, the experience, the escape, if you will.
Absolutely.
But from a competitive perspective, you can't deny that wave pools are, to me, I think a valid resource, especially given what you said before, Vicki, where in a competition, there's a lot of downtime while you wait for waves. And it's just...
Yeah, and you might get a set, and your fellow competitor, they're screwed because they're not getting a set. So,
and many times during my career, and I'm sure yours too, when we were pros,
we've been on either side.
I beat people that I are for sure better bodyboarders than me because I just got better waves. I got luck. Luck was on my side. I caught a better wave than that guy, and I beat him. But I'm not by any stretch better than that person. So. Yeah, the wave pool thing eliminates that.
Yeah.
So the future's bright for wave pools. And, anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
I don't think so, but, don't diss until you try it because, I know there's a lot of negative people out there about wave pools, but go try it. Try the chlorine barrels.
Yeah, it's fun, man.
Super fun.
And, we do this, we plan to keep doing a wave pool trip every year. So, stay tuned to our social media. We have a link at the bottom of our website that says bodyboarding travel. Go click on that. We always post updates when we're doing trips.
We forgot to talk about the practicing your skills. The amount of waves you can get. Like, if you're not good at a backflip and you never get the waves in Huntington Beach where you live because you don't get the barrel to try this or the wedge to try that, you can practice your maneuvers and in these waves over and over again until you master them.
Well, you see that with BSR. A lot of surf teams and coaches go to BSR a lot, and I mean a lot. Like some of them are there every month because it's a repeatable wave, and you can repeat over and over the same wave and try the same maneuver. So it's a fantastic practice facility to go to when you have a wave pool like that at your disposal.
We should get one in our backyard.
Yeah. Well, we'll need a bigger backyard first and foremost. And here in Southern California, e-bodyboarding doesn't quite pay enough profits to do that.
So come support us so you can come ride our wave
so
pool
we can,
in Texas.
then we'll invite you. Excuse me. So we'll wrap it up here. This went on much longer than I anticipated, but it was fun to talk about wave pools and wave pool technology. Again, look out for our video from Texas Tube Tour 2021 coming in a few weeks after our trip there. And on behalf of Vicki, my lovely bride, thank you guys for watching on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and hit the like button and post any comments. And those of you listening on the podcast, thank you for listening. And folks, it's The Real Deal Show, and we will see you next time, and we will see you in the surf.